right, welcome to Talkin' Investing. I am Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to do our daily Bitcoin and Bitcoin miner update. It was another rough day for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, so I want to go through the big board. I want to go through the Bitcoin charts, but I also want to talk about a big piece of data that is coming out tomorrow before the market opens, because I think that drove a lot of today's activity. And I also want to talk about going below a very important line of support. So there's some key stuff to look at today. So if you're new to the channel, we cover Bitcoin and the miners all the time on here, so please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if everybody would please smash the like button, it really does help the channel out a lot. I appreciate it. Let's start with the Bitcoin miner big board. Okay, you'll see the big board is very red today. Every miner except for one was in the red. DigiHost, for whatever reason, was up 1.37%. And it's worth noting, when we get to the Bitcoin charts, you're going to see Bitcoin was down quite a bit from yesterday's close to today's close. So these numbers actually are in line, or actually probably a little bit better than expected versus the action that Bitcoin had in the last 24 hours. Riot was down 0.62%, Marathon 1.79%, Core Scientific 1.28%. So there were a lot of companies that performed very well on a day where we're going to see Bitcoin was actually down about 5% from yesterday's close till today's close. So that's 2 days in a row of basically all red. Yesterday was actually 100% red with some major moves to the downside. So today, although it was very red, is a move a little bit in a better direction. Let's take a look at Bitcoin on the 15-minute time frame, and you're going to see from somewhere about in the middle of the trading day right here, we were just at this line of support. Our line of support is just under $20,000. That has been holding. We have gone below it several times. We'll look at that when we look at the chart zoomed out a little bit, but you can see we dipped below it all night last night, and then we kind of fought with it all morning this morning, and then we just broke to the downside, and we had several hours in a row that were straight down basically into the close. So the equities closed here in the US with Bitcoin at about 19,370. So that was significantly lower than the close yesterday. As always, we have an orange line for yesterday's close where Bitcoin was at $20,485 when the US equity markets closed yesterday. So if we look from close to close, that's about 5.5% to the downside for Bitcoin. So with that in mind, remembering the Bitcoin miners activity, a lot of those were down 1, 2, 3%. So that was actually quite good. There are days where Bitcoin's down 5.5% and the Bitcoin miners are down 15%. So all in all, the Bitcoin miners held their own today. I do think that is indicative of the fact that most of them are bouncing along their bottom as well. So a lot of these miners ran into some lines of support here today, even though Bitcoin was down quite a bit. Okay, before I zoom out and go through the rest of these, I want to talk about CPI data. So this is the inflation data. This comes out tomorrow morning before the market opens. This comes out at 8:30. So I do think that this big run for the last half of the trading day today, basically straight down, had a lot to do with hedging against tomorrow's CPI number. Last month, unfortunately, the CPI number came in a little bit hot, a little bit worse than expected, and Bitcoin and the market reacted very, very poorly. So there was massive downward pressure, and we've really had downward pressure ever since. So right now, this is an article that came out just a few hours ago. White House warns CPI inflation number will be elevated. White House officials are preparing the country for a hot inflation rate ahead of the release of Wednesday's Consumer Price Index, but they insist that some key inflation components, including gas prices, are coming down. So one of the things they're trying to get out ahead of this on is say, listen, remember, this is June's CPI number that's coming out. So we're now almost in the middle of the July. So one of the things I think they're trying to put people's mind at ease with is June was not what we hoped it would be, but we're already seeing some progress in July. So, that's kind of a hint that maybe July's numbers are going to start to head in the right direction. In the meantime, we have not yet seen this number. It comes out at 8:30 tomorrow morning, but it says, driving the news, independent economists estimate that the annual headline inflation will increase to 8.8% for June. So that's up from 8.6% in May, and 8.6% was a decades high. Okay, so this is inflation over the last 12 months, but really I just want to look at the last 3 months. This is March, which came in at 8.5, so that was a gigantic jump up from 7.9. April, it got a little better. It was down to 8.3, so we started to think maybe that was the peak and we were heading in the right direction. However, unfortunately, May came in as a surprise, 8.6, which was worse. And that was enough worse that it really tanked the market and it really sent Bitcoin spiraling downward. May was 8.6. Now we're expecting 8.8. So the most important thing to understand is the month over month is not as important necessarily as the actual versus the expectation. So the expectation is now an 8.8. So that is what we need to watch in the morning. If we come in substantially higher than 8.8, if this thing starts with a 9, then I think we're in for a rocky road at least for the next 24 to 48 hours. If it comes in substantially above this, 9.2, 9.4, that would be not good. If it comes in at 8.8 or 8.9, that would be just about matching expectations. So even though that was worse than May, I think that would be just fine. And I will say, including today's activity, I think the last several days, both the stock market and Bitcoin have built in the expectation that this CPI number is going to be worse than expected. If this starts with a 9, it's likely to have some negative consequences. That is very high. We're already expecting it to be worse than last month, and that would be worse than we're even expecting. It seems like the talk ahead of this number is preparing us for the worst, so I'm not expecting to beat, but we will see tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning. So again, this I think has been what's causing the main driver behind Bitcoin's activity, particularly as it dumped all afternoon and as it dumped below our line of support. So I would be looking, if we can come in with an 8.9 or less, I would be looking potentially for Bitcoin to get back above our line of support, which is just under $20,000. So let's go back to the chart. Okay, so this is the Bitcoin chart on the 4-hour time frame, and I've added a couple of lines. You'll see this pink line's been here all along. It's just under 20,000. I have it at 19,890. Again, that pink line represents the previous high from the previous Bitcoin bull cycle. That is from 2017. So that is a 4.5-year line. For the first time ever, we did break below that line. So you can see we had some time here where we were below that, but we did pull right back above it. And then once again, we pulled below that line here around June 30th through July 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And then we pulled back above it again. We actually pulled all the way up to 22,490. So we got substantially above that line, only to spend basically the last several days, the last 5 days really, you can see here in almost a straight line down. So we've now broken through this line on the 4-hour candle. This last 4-hour candle both started and finished below this line of support. We have a little green candle working right now, but again, I think this is all basically completely dependent on, I am expecting this to go sideways between now and 8:30 tomorrow when we get the CPI report. And then based on what that report says, I think is going to base on whether we go test some lower numbers or we start to push back up and see if we can't get above our long-term line of support at just under 20,000, which we've maintained fairly well in my opinion. Back on June 30th, we were trading at around $8,600. So if we go below that, then we will have a lower low. So we always want to avoid a lower low. So that's the first number we want to make sure to stay above. If we do go below that, then I really would expect to test this number. Back on June 18th, we kind of candlewick down to about 17,600. So these are the two lines that I would be looking at tomorrow if the CPI report comes in worse than expected. And particularly if it starts with a 9 or above, I really expect to test these lines. However, you never know. I definitely do think we have built a lot of bad news into this. If we look at this chart, Bitcoin over the last 5 days is down 13.5%. So we have built in some negative news. So there's a little flexibility there. So again, not sure which way it's going to go, but those are the numbers I'm looking at on the downside. We need to hold above about 18,600 so that we don't set a lower low. And then if we break through that, then our line at 17,567, that would be our low for the last 18 months. So that's the lowest we've been in all of 2021 and all of 2022. So if we go beyond that, then tomorrow I'll show some of the lines that I have below that. I have a line at 15,700. I really do think these two lines are going to hold. However, I continue to say so far in the year 2022, the pressure has been down. So it would certainly be no surprise at all to retest these two lines right here. If we look at Bitcoin on the 1-day time frame, it becomes a little more clear. You'll see here's this day's candle. So we started right at the line today, right at our line of support, and we've been under it virtually all day. So we are likely to close under this line of support, and so tomorrow we're going to have to see where CPI comes in. Does this line hold at 18,600? 17,600? Does this line hold at 17,600? Or are we going to set a new low for this bull cycle? So the only thing I can say is on CPI day, a lot of times there's massive volatility. So we may flash up or down to a given number. I do think within 48 hours of whatever this CPI number is, Bitcoin and the market will sort itself out and get a little back on track as to whatever it was doing. So I'm not going to look at any of the other indicators because right now for the next 24 hours, really until the CPI number hits, none of that really makes a difference. There's a few times a month where we get a number that just dictates the action completely in the short term, and this is one of those numbers. So obviously, as a function of this, another one of those numbers is when the Fed gives their next rate hike. If CPI comes in somewhere around expected, then we've already priced in a 75 basis point hike from the Fed. That is expected, and we've pretty much eliminated the possibility of a 1% increase by the Fed. So the only thing to me that would send a shockwave through this system is if the CPI number was so bad that it would actually cause the Fed to put that on the table and consider a 1% rate increase versus a 75 basis point. I'd like to see what happens tomorrow, and we'll regroup. We'll see, did these two lines of support hold? If CPI comes in better than expected, can we get back above 20,000 and maintain that? Because you'll see this line has held very strong. Even though we've gone below it a few times, we have gotten right back above it each time. So let's see if the same thing holds this time. If not, if we do start heading lower and lower, then we're going to have to start looking at some other potential price targets. We are already in historically oversold levels right now, and a part of the reason for that is I think all this bad news has been priced in, so I'm just not expecting to take out both of these lines. However, expect the unexpected. We've had massive downward pressure this year, so you just can't rule anything out. So we're gonna have to wait and see. So those are the numbers I'm looking at. Those are the lines of support and resistance that I'm looking at for the next 24 hours. So that's all I got for you today on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far, remember to subscribe to the channel and smash the like button. I will see you in the next video. Thanks.